Okay, so I'm gonna make a video about this topic now because I'm not allowed to talk about it on the Steam forums for Shadow of War. Isn't that awesome? I am incredibly freaking angry right now. Well, I guess not angry, I'm more exasperated at the actions of certain moderators and other PR blunders that Shadow of War has seemingly been suffering through over the past couple weeks. So let's talk about some of those PR blunders, and let's talk about the stupid stuff that's been happening on the Steam forums, because there's been a lot of it. So recently, I haven't exactly been quiet on my thoughts on Shadow of War. For the most part, since it was announced, I've been covering it very positively. I've praised Monolith being very open about the development of the game, showing off lots of gameplay, doing live streams, and being very involved with the community. However, in the last 2 or so weeks, I think the game has had a drastic downturn and has had quite a few PR blunders and announcements. In my mind, it kinda started when they announced the mobile version of Shadow of War, and I understand it's not made by the same developers or anything like that, but still, the mobile game doesn't look very good, and I don't think many people asked for it. And when people don't ask for something like a mobile game and then they get it anyways, usually the reaction is less than positive. Even if it's not the case and the mobile version didn't take any of the budget or the time to make the real game, people still get that feeling in their minds. So if you're gonna make a mobile game, you might as well at least make it good, or do what I thought they would have done, which is make a companion app. You know, those companion apps that every single AAA game has these days that will work perfectly with Shadow of War, because you could just manage your fortresses when you're not playing the game, or you could like level up your orc companions or something like that. It would be really good. Or at least it wouldn't look as bad as the mobile game that's currently being developed looks. In the announcement trailer, the mobile game that they showed off was less than stellar looking. In fact, they only showed a few seconds of gameplay in the entire trailer, which was otherwise padded out by cinematics for the real version of the game, or gameplay from the actual Shadow of War. When things like that happen, it makes people think that they're trying to hide something, and that's definitely not a good look for your game. So if you go to that trailer on YouTube, you'll see the top comments saying, hey, we didn't really ask for this, or, you know, make a companion app. Overall, it just doesn't seem like people were really asking for a mobile game, and people were less than happy that it's happening. So the next trailer they released shortly after was the Kumail Nanjiani reveal as the Agonizer, one of the characters in Shadow of War. I don't know if I pronounced his name right, because I don't really follow him. He's someone I know exists, but I've never, like, really seen a lot of his work. He's one of those actors that I see in other things, and I'm like, oh, I know your face, but I have no idea where you're from or who you are. And that's not a knock against the guy. I think he's actually kind of talented, and he is pretty funny. But I don't think this trailer they have him in really did a good job of putting him in the Lord of the Rings universe. I don't think his brand of humor or dialogue or even accent fit the Lord of the Rings universe very well at all. And granted, the Middle-earth series takes a lot of liberties with the lore, but this one I think is going a little bit too far. His accent doesn't resemble that of anyone else in Middle-earth, and the dialogue is more like it's straight out of 2017. While it is pretty entertaining, I don't want my orcs to sound like they're from the modern era. They shouldn't say like every second sentence like a goddamn valley girl. That doesn't make any sense.
I came up with this great death knot, like I stayed up all night. But now it's like, what if I say it and it's actually not great? I couldn't live with that.
It's things like that that take you out of the experience, and if you think I'm the only one that noticed that, just go into the YouTube comments or the Reddit posts, and there's plenty of other people pointing this out. What it does is it makes it feel like you only have this celebrity playing a role in the game because they're a celebrity and people will recognize their voice. And is there anything really wrong with that? Well, that's debatable. I mean, it does do some good marketing for the game for more casual audiences, but at the same time, it does take a lot of people who want to be invested in the game out of the experience. What I'm trying to say is it comes off as a very corporate move to include someone like him in the game. Maybe he really wanted to be in it though, maybe he's a fan of the series, I can't tell you that for sure, but all I can say is that's the impression that I got from the trailer. So people were a little bit wary about that, you know? There's 2 trailers that they might not have really liked. It seems to take away from the core experience of Shadow of War, and then that big ugly dark cloud called microtransactions appears out of nowhere. I've already made an entire video on the microtransactions, so I'm going to give you a very brief overview here. People don't like them. Putting a microtransaction system in a single-player game is seen as a really big negative by a great many people. It is becoming more common, but by no means is it generally accepted by most audiences. The microsystem in Shadow of War revolves around loot crates, which is something we see in a lot of games nowadays, and you can get everything with in-game currency. Now again, I still think it's a negative because we don't know if they've rebalanced the game in order to make it better to just pay for things rather than doing a bit of extra grind to get them in the game, which wasn't originally intended, but we don't really have evidence for that, so I'm willing to give it a shot to see if, you know, they do it properly or not. But other people aren't so forgiving, and while I still think it's a negative, others are extremely against having microtransactions in general, much less in a single-player game that they were looking forward to. They also announced it about a month removed from the developer of Two Worlds 2 removing console commands from their game and putting in a microtransaction system onto the PC version, which had been available on the Xbox version for years. And that was a big no-no and caused a lot of community uproar. To me, it also comes off as a bit dishonest from WB and Monolith because they've been showing off all this gameplay and all these features, and then they waited until a couple months removed from release before they talk about microtransactions. And let's be real here, they knew what they were doing when they didn't talk about it until now. Alright, with all that talked about, let's move on to stupid internet drama, because at the end of the day, that's what gets me views! I'm being half sarcastic. So the Steam forums for Shadow of War are currently resembling the Siege of Minas Ithil. As expected, after the announcement of microtransactions, there were many users that were going to the forums to complain about them and voice their opinions. And WB and Monolith and whoever else probably should have seen that coming because microtransactions are so controversial in the industry right now. But they did it anyways, so they opened up the floodgates for people to put in their complaints. And I must say, the way the moderators have been handling it is less than ideal. So in response to the criticism that the game's been receiving over microtransactions and other recent events, the moderators on the Steam forums have been adopting a bit of a scorched earth policy regarding duplicate topics. After about a day or so of players voicing their concerns about microtransactions and talking about the game and possible flaws in general, the moderators started merging, deleting, locking threads, and banning users. The moderators have listed a few reasons for this. They're saying that the reasons behind it stem from trying to keep the front page a lot cleaner so there's not tons of duplicate posts over there, and trying to not have content that misrepresents what the microtransaction system is. So basically, if someone says something that's not completely 100% right, then they remove the post or lock it. Now, I understand not wanting to have the game misrepresented, that's completely understandable, but at the end of the day, if the game is being misrepresented, that's a problem for the PR department and not the players. They shouldn't be silenced for saying something that might not be correct because maybe they don't know or wasn't explained properly to them. In addition, the moderators merging or locking threads that talk about negative things like microtransactions in the game does potentially hide them from other people that might not be aware, and that's definitely not beneficial for the consumer. I think in a situation like this, it's definitely a form of censorship. The moderators quite clearly don't want people talking about specific topics, so they're trying to minimize the impact that those topics have on the forums. And that's not what a good moderator does. Their job is to keep everything civil and working properly in the forum space. The moderators have said that they're trying to keep misrepresentation and false facts about the game to a minimum, and I do respect that up until the point where they're removing posts that aren't accusatory in the slightest. Hence, about an hour ago when I posted what I consider a very lengthy and well thought out post that encouraged discussion about the recent uproar about the game. It was up for about 8 minutes, didn't receive a single reply, and was promptly deleted from the forums. Or when I posted something else that was addressing the moderators, and they merged it with another post and then left a reply that didn't have anything to do with what I posted. I don't know about you, but I don't totally think that's okay. Now, from what I can tell, most of this moderation mishap is from a user called Laptop65, and they seem to be prioritizing negative opinions or stuff they don't agree with rather than things that don't encourage discussion. For instance, he seems to have a problem with people bringing up Denuvo and negative connotations towards that service, going as far as to say that whether a game has Denuvo or not has no bearing on the consumer, and you would only care if you were intending to crack or pirate the game. I don't think it's really a good idea for a moderator to accuse someone of pirating video games when they talk about Denuvo, especially when their concerns are completely valid, as Denuvo does impact consumers, especially in single-player games. There's been many games in the past that use Denuvo for single-player purposes, and then when the service gets shut down, you can't play them anymore. Remember that game Darkspore? Well, you probably don't because it was mediocre, but you also don't because no one can play it anymore because it required you to always be online, even though the majority of the content was single-player only. So yes, Denuvo does have an impact on single-player games, and it's not just a concern for people who want to pirate them. And as a moderator, you shouldn't be bringing that up in the first place. At the time of this recording, there's been dozens of users that have been banned, threads that have been locked or merged in other places, or flat out deleted, and I don't think that's okay. I think it's going a bit too far, and I think WB or Monolith or whoever needs to take care of this. I know for a fact that this moderator isn't an employee with Monolith or WB, so they brought him on for some reason. And my sources tell me that there's been many problems with this moderator in the past, and he tends to do things like this. So how he continues to be a mod for this and other games really surprises me. And again, I'm making this video because I'm not allowed to talk about this on the Shadow of War forum, so I have no other place to do it. I was originally trying to take care of this very quietly and literally talk to the moderator. But considering my posts were getting moved or deleted within minutes of me putting them on the forums, I really didn't have a choice. So, I will be contacting WB and Monolith about this because I find this very unacceptable. I highly recommend that this moderator take a step back and think about what he's doing and maybe just, take a little break for a while. Because what you're doing right now is increasing the negative PR for Monolith, WB, and Shadow of War, and honestly, you're not doing a very good job as a moderator. So let me know what you think about this entire situation, your thoughts on Shadow of War. Do so in the comments, or on my Discord, or on my Twitter, or other places that I sometimes hang out in. I am PattyJack. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day.